I've already done a little bit.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Brotherly Love in the District. Tristan here, along with Jacob. And Jacob, you want to tell them what we're going to get into?
Yeah, so we are going to be talking about the free agent frenzies in both baseball and the NFL. So that's going to be really interesting to talk about. And finally, into the NHL. Um, Last night we saw Claude Drew's 1,000th and most likely last game with the Flyers, as well as the Capitals are starting to get into a really hot streak, winning seven out of the last eight, I believe, with their win last night. So let's get right into it.
Yeah, so we'll start off with football and talk a lot about the free agents. So we thought we were starting to see something just with uh, Russell Wilson and Carson Wentz being traded last week. And then Deshaun Watson is now back in the mix with all the allegations getting dropped and having no charges. So he's now back in the mix, and his most likely landing spots are now Atlanta, New Orleans, and the Panthers. I honestly think the most interesting spot would be for him would be the Saints.
Yeah, I think the Saints is the best team out of those choices.
Yeah, I think they have the best chance at making a run with just having that. Uh, but they still have yet to see where he's going to land. Did you also see Baker Mayfield requested a trade?
Yeah,
And the Browns said after they found out that they probably had no chance at getting Deshaun Watson, they're like, "Oh yeah, you're staying here, bud."
and it's not like Baker Mayfield has any pull. He isn't that good.
Yeah, and that's what they were saying. Like the reason they won't trade him is because he doesn't really have any leverage. Like, or if they try to trade him now, they won't have any leverage because he already wants out. So if they're going to trade him, then they know that they won't get as much if they were to trade him after he requests a trade, because he is definitely not as talented as some of these other quarterbacks who can request a trade.
He's very streaky, and whenever he plays good games, it seems like it's most of the time against bad teams.
Um, a couple other big ones. Did we mention this last week with Khalil Mack going to the Chargers?
I think that happened shortly
I
after
think it
we.
happened right after. So
Yeah,
Khalil Mack going to the Chargers for, I believe it was a second round pick and a sixth round pick.
yeah,
Which,
and the Chargers signed J.C. Jackson as well, so
yeah,
they're
and
looking
that
like
is
a
going to be a
dangerous team.
dangerous defense. I don't know how much I trust it though. But I
I
mean,
trust them a lot more than I trust the Bengals.
well, that is fair. But yeah, so the Chargers defense just got a lot scarier with Derwin James, J.C. Jackson, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, a couple other big names getting either re-signed, extended, or traded. Raiders extending Max Crosby. Uh, Here's another one that'll have a little bit of conversation. The Browns trading for Amari Cooper.
That I'm not sure what the Cowboys were doing because they traded him for a fifth and a sixth. And I saw on it was I forgot what sports page it was on Instagram. They gave the Cowboys an A and the Browns a C. It should be the other way around. I honestly think that's a terrible trade for the Cowboys. I really don't know why you do it for a fifth and a sixth. Yes, if he was disagreeing with the team, okay, but a fifth and a sixth, and they just released Lyle Collins, they lost Randy Gregory, and they haven't really signed anybody. It's not looking great for the Cowboys.
The
Great for the rest of us.
the only thing that makes me think that it's not going to be great for the Browns is the fact that they just had Odell Beckham, and what did he do there? Absolutely nothing.
Neither did Jarvis Landry, who was.
Yeah, so I mean, like,
Has Jarvis Landry signed with the team yet? I don't think so.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm just
I
rolling
didn't think
through.
he did.
I'm just scrolling through all the free agent signings from last week up until now. So we're we'll get there. But I mean, the thing is, like, yeah, Amari Cooper may be one of the top route runners in the league, but so was Odell, and Odell didn't do anything there. Now, whether there's a difference, whether there will be a difference because of personalities or whatever, or maybe Baker and Odell had clashing personalities where Amari Cooper is a little more down to earth. Who knows? But I just don't see how this is going to affect. I don't see how this is going to make the Browns any better with
It isn't.
the fact that they didn't do anything with Odell last year.
Well, it isn't. The Browns, they're perpetually mediocre at best. I mean, you saw that a few years ago, we were talking about like people were talking about them being the hipster pick for a possible Super Bowl. My, how times have changed. I mean, they have such a good core. I mean, if you look at their defensive line, it's great. When Odell was there, I mean, they should have a good offense. It's just they do not perform. So yeah, they're not going to do much. And if you look at their division, you got Bengals, Steelers, Browns, and Ravens. They're probably the worst team in that
Well,
division.
I don't know because I'd still say the Steelers are a little iffy. Uh,
I think they're better because they just signed Miles Jack, and if they
I
can
did see that. Yep.
if they get back Juju, I think they can be a better team than the Browns.
Going along with the big news, the Cardinals are re-signing Zach Ertz. And then one of the other really biggest pieces of news is the fact that Tom Brady is returning for another season. And I would just like to say
That's
that I
strange.
called this. I knew he wasn't going to stay retired. Like it's just one of those things that is too surreal.
He
Like,
can't help himself.
yeah, exactly. So I was talking to one of my friends literally right before he unretired. It was like 3 hours before. I was saying, like, Tampa probably won't be able to find a quarterback because this year's quarterback situation is terrible. The draft, not great. Free agency, absolutely terrible, being that Mitch Trubisky was the only quarterback to be signed so far because every other quarterback has re-signed with their team. Rodgers, Kirk Cousins. And then like the only other good quarterbacks, possibly good quarterbacks that could have been signed were Tyrod Taylor and Teddy Bridgewater, which again, not great, but I'd still say that Mitch Trubisky is the best one to be signed so far. So I knew that the odds of Tampa getting a decent quarterback were slim. And I said to him, I'm like, Tom Brady's not going to be done. He's going to come back because he's not going to be able to stay away. And sure enough, about 3 hours later, I get a notification from ESPN that Tom Brady's returning for a 23rd season. So I think it doesn't really surprise me. Yeah, like you said, I don't think he can help himself. He just wants to keep on playing football. The Vikings re-signed Kirk Cousins, like I just mentioned. Cowboys are re-signing Michael Gallup, which is pretty big for them, especially now that they don't have Amari Cooper. The Dolphins are signing Emmanuel Ogba. The Dolphins are also signing Chase Edmonds.
I did see that was a very big deal.
Oh, it says here that the Browns are releasing Jarvis Landry.
Yeah, I saw that. That's why I asked if he has he signed anywhere yet.
The Dolphins are kind of getting a nasty backfield now because they also had Raheem Mostert. So they now have Myles Gaskin, Chase Edmonds, and Raheem Mostert. That's a pretty nasty triple-headed backfield.
I mean, they're still not going to be that great, but
yeah. And their quarterback, they have Teddy Bridgewater, so it's not terrible.
They could get like 6 or not like 8 wins, maybe.
I don't think they should have fired Brian Flores, in my personal opinion.
They should know.
Like, he might not have started out the season so hot, but he still won 8 of his last 9 games. That's pretty good.
That's despite the ownership telling him, "Hey, we want to tank."
Yeah, like that's not a terrible track record. So I think that was kind of useless. The Cardinals agree to terms with James Conner, who I believe led the league in rushing touchdowns last season. Only thing is he's kind of been injured a lot. So
he has been injured a lot, and there's a lot more running backs you'd rather have than him.
Yeah. Like we just said, Steelers signing Mitchell Trubisky, Seahawks signing Quandre Diggs, who's one of the better safeties on the market.
The best Diggs.
I don't think that's I would say he's a better
he's the best defensive back. Diggs.
Diggs,
He's the
yes.
best defensive Diggs.
Here's a little bit bigger news. Eagles agree to terms with edge rusher Hassan Reddick, who you
I
ready
didn't
for
see
this?
that.
So it's a 3-year, $45 million deal. But listen to this stat. He is fifth in the last 2 years once he switched to edge rusher because he was playing more linebacker. Once he switched to edge rusher 2 years ago, he is fifth in sacks in the past 2 seasons. And he is one of 8 players to have above 20 sacks in the past 2 seasons combined. And he's only behind TJ Watt, Aaron Donald, Trey Hendrickson, and I can't remember I want to say Nick Bosa, but I can't quite remember. But he's fifth, and the other defensive linemen are that he's with is insanely good. Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Aaron Donald, Trey Hendrickson. Those are the only 4 defensive linemen or players who have more sacks than him in the past 2 seasons. He has 23 and a half sacks in the past 2 seasons, which in my opinion is pretty insane. So big sign there for the Eagles getting their edge rusher. And something that I think this leads to is the fact that I think they're going to try to let that they're really buying into letting John Gannon run his defense, which I'd like to see because he's a smart guy. And what he did with what he had last year was impressive to say the least. And so trying to give him what they can is huge. Christian Kirk getting absolutely a huge payday for no reason. That was one of the bigger pieces of news. I saw yesterday that they said he's really good in the slot, but once he moves to the outside, that could be an issue.
Yeah, I'm questioning that move a little bit. I don't think he's worth the money that he was given. He's not a bad player. I just don't think he's worth what he was given.
Yeah.
But maybe they see something.
Huh?
But maybe they see something.
Yeah. Dolphins signing Teddy Bridgewater, like I said. We talked about the Chargers signing JC Jackson. Wow. The Jaguars made a couple money moves. They also signed Evan Ingram, who's a good receiving tight end. He's not great at blocking, but he's a good receiving tight end that coming from New York.
They also signed Brandon Sheriff.
Huh?
They signed Brandon Sheriff.
Oh, they did?
Yep.
I haven't seen that yet. That must have been a little
That
further
happened
up.
a day or 2 ago.
And then they also signed Zay Jones. So I mean, they're really trying to make a push this season to not be one of the worst teams in the league, and
They'll be mediocre at best.
They're trying to get Trevor Lawrence some weapons. The Jets are signing CJ Uzama.
Ooh,
that's actually a pretty good signing. CJ,
yeah, it's a good signing, but the
except
Jets
for the fact that he's going to the Jets.
Holes in they have so many holes in their team. That's not going to help.
Yeah, and I also don't think personally, and I've also heard from other multiple like reporters and like watching stuff on TV and stuff that they said Zach Wilson isn't ready to be a starting quarterback in the NFL yet. He's still trying to throw the ball a million miles an hour instead of just kind of trying to work the ball into the spaces that he can. So like he's not quite ready to be a starter yet, and he needs to sit. So they probably still won't be able to do much more this season. Jason Kelsey is returning to the Eagles for another season. So
Fletcher Cox isn't.
Actually, no, he re-signed last night. He re-signed for a 1-year, $15 million deal.
You released him.
Yeah, because so they released him and then re-signed him to get him for less money. Kind of a smart move, in my opinion.
Did not see that. Oh.
Here, I have the report here from.
I just found it.
I'm also here. So this was from Let's Go to the Phones. Fletcher Cox 1 year deal for 15 million guaranteed with incentives to recoup the rest of his money, which I'm presuming was what he was gonna have for this season had he not been released and then re-signed. So he was released and re-signed, so he'll be coming back. See, Andrew Whitworth announced his retirement.
Yeah, I did see that. The thumb is gone.
uh Ravens are signing Marcus Williams. He was probably the biggest safety on the market. So
Yeah,
that's
I was a little I was mad about that. I wanted Washington to get him because I still think we need a safety, but
I would have liked the Eagles to get him. I just knew realistically that they weren't going to get him. So
yeah, I
I
probably thought the same thing too.
I didn't really worry. I wasn't really angry about it. The Broncos stole Randy Gregory from the Cowboys. Cowboys said they were going to re-sign him, and then the Broncos came over and were like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" and took him off of them. So I think that's kind of funny. But then did you see Tom Brady's newest weapon? Newest new weapon. I guess that kind of makes sense. In Russell Gage,
No clue who that is.
he was once Calvin Ridley got hurt, he was the number one receiver for Atlanta. And in all honesty, he's actually not a terrible receiver.
Not terrible, but Atlanta was pretty bad last year.
I want to look up his stats actually. Because I mean he wasn't bad at all. I don't know if he was ready to
He had
be
770 yards, 4 touchdowns, 66 receptions. That's not bad. What money did they get him on?
I don't think this has his contract on it. No, it doesn't. It just says they signed him. Let me see.
3 year, 30 million, 20 million guaranteed.
I mean, honestly, that's not bad since they're just throwing money at people nowadays.
Yeah.
So that's not terrible.
Yeah, and they did just re-sign Chris Godwin.
They did just re-sign Chris Godwin for a $60 million contract, 40 mil guaranteed. Giants signing Tyrod Taylor. So it looks like Danny Dimes is on his way out of New York.
He should have been a year and a half ago. And did you see that the Titans released Julio Jones after 1 year?
I did see the Titans release Julio Jones. He's getting old though. So
Yeah.
that makes sense. The Jaguars are also signing Darius Williams, who was the cornerback opposite of Jalen Ramsey to win the Super Bowl. Because I know you have no idea who Darius Williams is.
Nope, not a lot of people do.
Yeah, I mean, because he's like, when you think of the Rams secondary, all you thought of was Jalen Ramsey. And then Eric Weddle once he came because he was
For
such
like
a
the
big
four
name to come
games he was
back.
on the team.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, he's a pretty decent outside corner. So the Jaguars really made a splash to try to make this team a little bit better and win some games. The Raiders signing Chandler Jones. That was a pretty big one in my opinion.
The Raiders are going to be nasty because they just traded for a little known wide receiver last night.
Yeah, which we'll get to. That one's coming up soon. Not we're starting to we'll get to that one because I want to talk about that one a lot. So yeah, the Raiders signing Chandler Jones. So Chandler Jones and Max Crosby coming off the edge. And here's another big one. The Bills signing Von Miller. That's gonna be a pretty good team.
I think that's a bad deal. It's 6 years, over 100 million. I don't think he's worth that anymore. He's old. He's up there. In 6 years,
Yeah, 6 years I think is a little bit, but I mean,
I think he looked great because he was in such a stacked defense. I don't think that's going to be a move that's going to pan out very well.
The
In
Bills
my
defense
opinion,
isn't stacked anymore, but it still is good. Like I would take the Bills defense over the Eagles defense right now. I'd say it's probably, if not a top 10 defense in the league, definitely a top 10 because they're solid at every position. They're nothing flashy, but they're solid at every position. They have a first rounder at D tackle and Ed Oliver. They now have Von Miller to rush off the edge. Their linebackers are solid. They're, again, nothing special. They have Tre'Davious White, who, when healthy, is a top 5 corner in the league. So, and then Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde might make up the best safety duo in the league right now, in my opinion. So they have talent there. It's just a matter of whether they can use it right or not.
Yeah.
Going off of that, we just talked about Raheem Mostert going to the Dolphins, the Buccaneers re-signing Chris Godwin. Another big signing that I also heard this could create a couple more problems is the Rams are signing Allen Robinson. So they now have Cooper Kupp, Allen Robinson, Robert Woods, and I heard yesterday on NFL Network that Odell Beckham still isn't off the table. So could you imagine a receiving core of Allen Robinson, Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham, Robert Woods, and Van Jefferson? That is an insane receiving core, possibly the best one in NFL history.
I really don't like this whole idea of super teams. Of all the places Allen Robinson could go, the Ram, like, how can they afford all this?
That was
they have a lot of big contracts
because they let Von Miller walk.
Well, yeah, that was a smart move because I still don't think he's worth 6 years over 100 million. He's old.
I'd say maybe a 2-year contract, but that's
maximum. I'd say max 30 million. That's what I'd give him, and he probably wouldn't take it.
And so yeah, I mean, but the Rams are going to be looking good, and this is the first time, probably since high school, maybe even ever, that Allen Robinson is actually going to have a good quarterback throwing to him, because he didn't have one in Penn State. Then he got drafted
quarterback in Penn State,
Christian Hackenberg.
Who in the world is that?
If you remember, he got drafted by the Jets.
In what round? The 8th?
Well, being that doesn't exist, I forget. I want to say it was like the 3rd. And then
I don't remember 3rd round Jets picks, Tristan.
The only reason I remember him is because he was Penn State. He was drafted 2nd round in 2016.
Yeah, I don't remember Jets picks after the 1st round.
Again, only reason that I remember him was because he was a Penn Stater. And his stats, they don't even have his stats up. They have his combine measurements, but yeah, they don't have his stats up. And then he went to the AAF once they created it.
Yeah, let's stop talking about random Jets quarterbacks. I don't even know how Allen Robinson quarterback, but
yeah, but he started off with Blake Bortles, then he went over to Chicago, and then he had Mitch, who I honestly don't think is a terrible quarterback. I think Matt Nagy's a terrible coach. Then after Mitch, he had Andy Dalton and Justin Fields. So yeah, he hasn't had the greatest of quarterbacks so far. And then the last big signing was Steelers signing Miles Jack. And to wrap it up, probably the biggest trade of this free agency era is the Raiders trading their 1st and 2nd round picks of this season for Devontae Adams.
Aaron Rodgers is gotta be
pissed, to say the least.
Will he even want to play for them anymore? Because they lost Valdez Scantling as well, and I still think their defense isn't that good. I think every year it's overrated in my opinion, and their offense, I mean, it pretty much was him and Devontae, and now they don't have that. Yeah,
so they, like you said yesterday, they have no one at receiver now.
They have Randall Cobb, so if this was like 7 years ago, that'd be cool.
Yeah, but it's not. But Derek Carr and Devontae Adams reuniting. They went to college together. So they're reuniting. And honestly, that's huge for the Raiders, especially in that AFC West now. Dude,
which is going to be one
the
of the best
AFC
divisions in
West is
NFL history.
insane.
Chiefs, Raiders, Chargers, Broncos. That's an insane division.
I'm going to put money on it right now. 4 AFC West teams making the playoffs this year.
I don't think so, considering how good the AFC West is, but I can see.
Well, there's seven playoff spots now.
Yeah, there's 7 playoff spots, but there's a lot of good teams in the AFC.
So like I don't know. I still think it's gonna be so like because I think the talent just over I think the Raiders is probably the worst team in that division, and they're still insane.
No, I think they're better than the Broncos. I think the
Yeah,
Broncos, yes, they have Russell Wilson, but they don't have a lot else, in my opinion.
I mean, dude, their team is the Broncos still
they have some good wide receivers, but I think they're lacking in their offensive line and their defense.
I can see where you're coming from on the defense. But then again, so are the whatever. Okay, so the Raiders have Devontae Adams at wide receiver, and that's about it. Because after that, they have like Brian Edwards and some other whoever.
Renfro.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I totally forgot about Hunter Renfro.
Josh Jacobs
at running back. So okay, that's not as bad as I thought it was. But the Raiders, okay, I see where you're coming from now, because the Raiders have a pretty decent offensive line with Max Crosby and Chandler Jones coming off the edge. So, okay, that's not terrible. I think it'll be close, honestly. I think they both, because the Raiders secondary, I think, is far worse than the Broncos secondary. So I think it'll be a close one. But yeah, that AFC West is going to be wild. And that really wraps up free agency so far. A lot of names being thrown around.
I'm going to talk about Washington for a little bit. We released Initis. We released Landon Collins, and we also released Eric Flowers, which cleared like $20 million in cap room. And J.D. McKissick, he pulled a Randy Gregory. He was originally going to sign with the Bills, but then he gave us an opportunity to match it. It's like a 2-year, $7 million deal, which is very good. So, I mean, that's big. He chose us over a possible Super Bowl contender. We also signed an offensive lineman. I don't remember his name.
He came from Indy, right? He was an all-pro in Indy.
He was an all-pro in Indy, but he came from the Jags.
That is why. I think that's.
We also signed Cam Sims, Bobby McCain.
So this here from Ruben Frank says that it wasn't done yet, but the Eagles are most likely to sign him again.
Who?
And that was last night at 10:34.
Who?
Fletcher Cox.
Oh.
Just because that's who we were talking about earlier. But I think that's really all the Eagles did in free agency. They didn't do. Oh, how could I forget to mention this? Howie Roseman's returning for 3 more years. He gets a 3-year extension through 2025, which honestly is a mediocre signing in my book. I mean, he showed what ability he has to make a good team once they won the Super Bowl, clearly, because he made a lot of big signings and trades that season, but lately he's been struggling, and so I don't know how well that's going to work out.
We signed Andrew Norwell, and he was an all-pro in Carolina, not Indy.
Oh, that
replaced Eric Flowers.
That name sounds familiar now that I think about it. But with that, I mean, I think free agency is all we really had to talk about there.
Yeah.
Want to move over to the NHL?
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the two of the bigger things in the NHL right now. One, Claude Giroux has played his 1,000th game, and he didn't travel with the Flyers as they're on their way to Ottawa right now. So something tells me he's not going to be a Flyer much longer. And I said to you last night that after he played his 1,000th game, I said he was probably getting traded. So,
And he probably is.
and I also texted a group chat that I'm in yesterday, and I go, all right, now that Claude Giroux has played his 1,000th game, where is he getting traded to tomorrow? So yeah, I mean, it's looking like he's going to be traded very soon. And I really hope he goes to Colorado. I just don't know if they have the ability to trade for him because they don't have a first round pick this year, which I think they're going to get a first round pick for him. And I don't know what prospects they'd be willing to give up because they have a lot of good young prospects that they probably want to keep in their system. So I don't know if he's going to be able to go to Colorado, but I'd like to see it happen. And one of the other big things is the fact that OV is now number 3 in NHL history in goals.
He passed Jaromir Jagr, and he's been playing really good as well. We are 6-0-1 in the month of March. The only team we lost to was an Edmonton overtime loss, so that's still points. So we've beaten Carolina 4-0, Seattle 5-2, Calgary 5-4. We lost to Edmonton 4-3, beat Vancouver 4-3, beat the Islanders 4-3, and we put a hurting on the Blue Jackets last night, winning 7-2, and we are 3 points away from the Rangers in the standings. So there's a possibility that we could climb back up because we have 70. Give me a minute.
74 points, I believe.
78.
Oh, I was just reading this thing and I thought it said 74. Yeah. The Flyers also won last night. They won 5-4 against the Preds, which is a good win, honestly. I mean, Matt Duchene is playing out of his mind right now.
Yeah, I mean, Drew got a win in his last game with you guys, so that's good. A little feel good story.
Yeah, this one hurts to see him go. I'm hoping he returns in free agency. I know that is highly unlikely, but I think based on what I've seen this season and what they've already done so far and what I think they're going to try to do over the offseason, where they've already re-signed Rasmus Ristolainen and looks like they're going to try to make a bit of a youth movement, bringing up some players like Cam York is up right now. They're trying to bring Morgan Frost back up, who's been going up and down lately. And maybe bringing a couple younger guys. Like they've had Jerry Mayhew playing quite a bit. Isaac Ratcliffe has played quite a bit. So I'm hoping maybe you see him come back I'd like to see him win a cup though. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing he deserves right now in his career is a cup.
And the thing with Colorado is, I've said this before, it seems like they're kind of the West Coast Caps, if that makes any sense. They have a great team almost every year, consummate President's Trophy contenders and losing the first and second round. So yeah, and I think if Colorado's to win, this is the year because they have a lot of contracts coming off the books, and a lot of them are on good contracts. Kadri is probably going to leave. Burakovsky's a free agent, and a few other players. So I think
this is their season.
It's this season.
Their team right now is insane overall. And they're like, I don't remember what the points are off the top of my head, and I don't want to say something that doesn't make sense. Actually, you know what? I can just pull up the standings right now. But I'm pretty sure they're like, yeah, never mind. They're only 3 points above the next team in the league, but they already have 91 points. I thought they were like miles ahead, but they're miles ahead the next team in their division. They have 91 points, and the next closest is St. Louis with 77. So, I mean, they basically, and then the next closest in the West is Calgary with 81. So they're really just blowing every team out of the water in their conference. And they have a chance to go for a 62 win season.
Possible.
It's highly unlikely with the fact that there is 21 games left and they already have 18 total losses. So it's very highly unlikely, but they still have a chance at it. But I wanted to look at their stats just because I want to see who they have. Like this team is just full of it's full of players that I've like know who they are. That is because I'm obviously not as deep into hockey as I am in football yet, so I don't know as much as I do. But I mean, Nazem Kadri, Miko Rantanen, Kale McCarr, Nathan McKinnon, Gabriel Landeskog, Burakovsky has 45 points in 59 games. I know Devin Tays Sam Girard, Alex Newhook, even Nick Abe-Kubel, who they picked up off waivers from the Flyers, is having a pretty decent time over there. I just don't know how much I trust their goaltending in the playoffs. As good as it is stats wise, Darcy Kemper, 43 games played, 241 goals against average, and a 923 save percentage. And then Pavel Francois, I think that's how you say it. Looks French.
Probably is.
14 games played, 246 goals against, and a 920 save percentage. So their goalies are playing well. I just don't know if I trust them in the playoffs. And that's where I have an issue there. But I think that's really it. Do you have any insight on where you think Giroux could go? Or where you'd want to see him go?
I think Calgary's off the table. It'd be nice to see him on Minnesota, but I don't think they're gonna do that because I think that'll go against what they're trying to do. So it's hard. He may go to the Leafs. He may go to the Avalanche. We're probably gonna see in the next few days. So yeah, I mean he's knowing our luck, he's probably gonna get traded just after we stop recording. So we'll see.
This is just like the like when Carson Wentz was getting traded, like you knew it was gonna happen, but you just don't know when it's gonna happen. Like you know it's gonna happen soon and you're just waiting, but you don't know when. And this gives me feelings like when Wayne Simmons got traded too. That was right at the trade deadline, and I was sitting in school waiting until it hit 4:00 to see if he got traded. And he got traded right at the deadline. So that was unfortunate. But that's where we'll leave that off there. And going to baseball, another big free agency frenzy going on over here too, with all these free agency signings. I think we should talk about the biggest one first in the Braves signing Freddie Freeman.
No, they didn't.
Or not the Braves, the Dodgers. Dodgers signing Freddie Freeman. My bad. That totally blanked in my mind, but yeah, Dodgers signing Freddie Freeman.
Knowing the Dodgers, they're still probably going to lose in the second or third round to the playoffs, so nothing to worry about, even though they have a stacked lineup.
Chris Bryant is going to Colorado.
I don't know why he did that. He should have either stayed with the Giants or went somewhere else, not Colorado.
Luke Voigt is going to San Diego.
Yeah, he just got traded while we were recording.
Traded for minor league right-handed pitcher Justin Lang.
Yeah. Nat signed Nelson Cruz, and apparently one of the reasons he came here is that the front office told him that they're gonna make some splashes in free agency. So it looks like we're gonna try and make some moves, and a lot of it's probably gonna try to appease Soto, encourage him to re-sign, but I've heard rumors of us possibly trying to sign Carlos Correa.
He
So it's
rejected the
Orioles offer
contract that he was offered. Yeah.
Soto or
Or no, this just
Correa.
says it just says like because it's a spotlight, it's a free agent and hot stove tracker on the MLB website. And this says it's the like it says Carlos Correa status qualifying offer rejected. Marcus Simeon signed a 7-year deal with the Rangers, it looks like.
That was before the lockout. That was a while ago.
Yeah, so it's like I'm just Corey Seager, 10-year contract, Freddie
A while
Freeman,
ago.
obviously going
Came
to
recently.
the Dodgers. This doesn't look updated
I
because
don't think it is.
it says here that Freddie Freeman's status qualifying offer rejected, even though he just signed with the Dodgers.
Yeah, but Correa, he was offered a deal by Baltimore, 10 years, 300 million. So that's kind of an idea what his deal will be in the ballpark of. So it should be interesting to see what the Nats do. We just signed Sean Doolittle. He's back after missing for 1 year, so that's cool.
Oh, that was before the lockout. I want to go back. Oh, wait, no, it wasn't. I totally forgot what today was.
Who?
I'm just looking at the big signings. Jacques Peterson went to San Fran.
Yeah, I saw that.
Like you said, Sean Doolittle re-signing, who I am not a big fan of personally.
Why?
Just because there's been a lot of Phillies games that he's closed out against us that I don't enjoy watching.
Speaking of left-handed relievers, you signed the piece of junk that is Brad Hand. Who?
Yeah, so I think that honestly, the reason that I like looking at the Phillies bullpen and how bad it is, if we get any pitcher with under a 5 ERA, I'm happy.
But Tristan, I don't think you realize how bad Brad Hand was. He was.
I don't think you realize how bad the rest of the Phillies bullpen is.
Brad Hand has a 7 ERA, Tristan.
His was 3.9 last season. I looked it up.
Tristan, for the Blue Jays, he had a 7 ERA.
Where is the?
He
I
played
was looking at the
games with them, and he had a 7.2 ERA. And he got released them. He signed with the Mets, but he pitched like crap for us.
I wonder where I looked
in the grid.
because now I'm looking and it says that he had a 12 ERA last season over
He was
for 3 teams.
terrible. Like he was genuinely horrible for.
Where's ERA? Oh, here it is. So
He
with
had a
Washington, he had a 3.59 ERA and
7, and then he had
21 saves. Then in Toronto, he was 0-2, 7.27, and 0 saves. And then with the Mets, he had a 2.7 ERA.
With the Blue Jays, he had more earned runs than he did strikeouts.
So okay, so look here. So in 41 games with Washington, he had a 3.59 ERA. In 11 games with Toronto, he had a 7 ERA. In 16 games with the Mets, he had a 2.7 ERA. It was his career that I guess I was looking at because this says a 3.6. Yeah. So, but
and considering he's like an inning or two guy, he's a closer.
No,
that ERA is bad.
Why did it say? Okay, no, I guess this was messed up because on the first page that I looked at, it said he had a 12.15 ERA. Yeah, this says a 12.15 ERA, but I go down and I look at his stats, and it says for 2021 through 3 teams, he had a 3.9 ERA.
He did.
Yeah, so I mean, again, not terrible. I mean, looking at the other pitchers,
that's bad.
Looking at the other, in Phillies terms, not terrible.
What was Hector Neris's ERA?
Hector Neris in one game went from a 3.5 ERA to above a 5 in a single game. In 2 outs. It wasn't even a full inning. It was
Hector Neris had a lower ERA than Brad Hand. He had a 3.63. That shows you how bad Brad Hand was. Brad Hand had a higher ERA than your most favorite pitcher in the whole league.
I don't think because then they brought in Ian Kennedy to close. And once they brought in Ian Kennedy to close, that is when things actually started looking decent at the end of the game.
he was still pitching innings.
He was pitching
He was just pitching an inning before.
he was pitching relieving innings, not closing innings. But I mean, looking at the rest of the bullpen, having Brad Hand, and they also got Jerry's Familia, who I know who he has a 3.94 ERA, 72 strikeouts, only one save because he's like he's a mid inning guy, not a closing pitcher. But again, not a terrible signing because I like the Phillies bullpen is just terrible. It is awful. It
These
arguably,
signings might help a bit, but I still think your pitching is going to be your ultimate weakness.
oh yeah, I agree. I'm just saying, like, looking at who they have, this is a step in the right direction, at least. Identifying and knowing that they have that issue in pitching and trying to make it better in some way, shape, or form.
And you
Then
still need another starter because after Wheeler and Nola, you don't really have anybody.
yeah, they do. They have I can't even
Eflin?
I can't even think of their pitchers off the top of my head. Hang on, yeah, I'll pull it up.
Do they really have anybody?
I think they still have Eflin.
It
They
says
have
Eflin, Gibson, and Ranger Suarez.
yeah, their starting pitchers aren't terrible. Ranger Suarez, he started out as a relief pitcher last year and ended up moving up to a starting pitcher. And in his starts, he was putting up pretty good numbers. I want to see if I can bring up his stats from last season. Pitching. Oh, that's not what I wanted.
It says in 2021,
8 and
8-5 with
1.36 ERA.
How many of the like?
I'm
how
not
many-
sure. Oh, here, game started 12.
Okay.
Wait, can I split that by game started?
Yeah, like how like that ERA? How much of
Yeah,
that was
that's
his relief?
so I know when he oh here, pitching starter. There we go. Ranger Suarez, 3-2 as a starter with a 1.5 ERA.
That's pretty good considering you're pitching.
Yeah. And then so we got Zach Wheeler, who played like an ace last year, obviously. Aaron Nola, who dropped off quite a bit.
He should be
But
better.
he needs to be better. He is one of the best pitchers we have there. And so he needs to be better. But he had a 4.6 ERA. Zach Eflin, who got injured quite a bit last season. He's another guy who is good but needs to play better. He had a 4.17 ERA. And then Kyle Gibson came over at the trade deadline. And I'd say he's probably the least of the pitchers, depending on where they put Ranger Suarez. But he had a 4.5 ERA, which again, he pitched decent when he came over. He gave us some quality starts occasionally, but it's, I mean, 4.5 ERA is not great.
Yeah, and ultimately, when it comes to bad pitching, both of our teams can fall under that category.
So yeah, I'd like to I don't think the starting pitching is terrible.
Ain't great, but middle of the road at best.
Yeah, it's not terrible. It obviously could be better, but it's not as bad as it's been in the past. We'll put it that way. So we'll see how that winds up. So they got Jerry's Familia. They also re-signed the they also re-signed Adubo Herrera for the center field. They signed Kyle Schwarber, who we know is
That's a good signing.
that's a big signing. And now they're trying to swing a signing of Nick Castellanos, who's another really dude. Looking at this lineup, this is going to be a really good lineup, and it's going to be hard to fit all the bats that they have into the lineup.
And
Because
considering not a Schwarber, he's not really good defensively. Castellanos, he isn't terrible. He's serviceable, I guess. Harper's getting better, but I think defense could possibly be your weak point because you also have Reese Hoskins. You have Alec Boehm, who's kind of like being forced to go to third. So it should be interesting to see where you fit everybody.
Here it is. Okay. So this is exploring 4 different Phillies lineups with Kyle Schwarber. I'm not going to go through all the lineups. I'm just going to read the bats that we have right now. And they seem to think that they're putting Kyle Schwarber in left field, which I think makes sense. Because after that, we don't really have any outfielders. Our outfielders are not great. So Kyle Schwarber, Gene Segura, who's going to be second base, Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, Reese Hoskins, Didi Gregorius, Alec Boehm, Adubel Herrera, and they're bringing up Bryson Stott from the minors to play at shortstop. He's the number 2 prospect in the Phillies prospect pool right now. So they're predicting that he's going to be starting at the beginning of the season. Now, something that would make this easier and maybe could change something up is if, one, they either don't start Bryson Stott, or 2, if they don't bring him up, because then they could put Didi Gregorius back at short, put Alec Boehm at third base, because right now they have him either one's going to be the DH and they have one being the DH and the other being the third baseman. So if Bryson Stott either doesn't start or doesn't come up from the minors in time for the season, then you could see Kyle Schwarber being the DH, Bryce Harper right field, Adubel Herrera in center, and then Nick Castellanos in left field, and then first base Reese Hoskins, second base Gene Segura, shortstop Didi, third base Alec Boehm, and catcher JT Realmuto. So they have possibilities. Honestly, this is a good problem to have because it looks like they're going to have too many bats to fit into their lineup, which is a good problem to have. But it's going to be interesting to see if they do somehow pull off this deal to get Nick Castellanos, how they're going to line up the team. And they also signed Corey Knebel for the new closer, who was on the Dodgers last season. So overall, I feel like I've been saying this every season for the past, 5 years. It looks like the future could be good, but it's Philadelphia. So we know how that ends
to go.
Yeah. But I think that's all I really have for this episode. What about you?
Yeah, that's all I got. Other than Nelson Cruz, the Nats really haven't done too much. Hopefully we do more in the future.
Yeah. So, but with that, we are going to finish it off there. You guys can follow us on Instagram at BL in the DC, where you can DM us questions and comments. You can email us questions and comments at blinthedc@gmail.com. You can rate us on Apple and Spotify now. So go ahead over and do that. And with that, we are going to end it off there. So we will see you guys next week.
See you later.